Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Susie. I am your host and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Today's episode comes about because I was on Instagram Live on Sunday and somebody had asked a question about blueprinter souls, and I directed them to the podcast very incorrectly of me because I thought I had already done an episode on blueprinter souls, but I haven't. So I'm doing this episode now so that I can in future direct people to the podcast episode. Apologies to that individual if you have come over to the podcast and you can't find the episode. It's because it didn't exist, but it will exist from today. First things first, I want to explain the difference between a soul blueprint and a blueprinter soul. Now, this is where we do have to define terminology that we're using so we understand what it is that we're talking about. The soul blueprint is essentially the part of the soul into which you're going to input certain information prior to coming into an incarnation. For example, in your soul blueprint, you will put in archetypal information. So, archetypal information that you want to work with during an incarnation. You will put into your soul blueprint certain lessons that you want to really master during an incarnation. This is all done in that pre-life period. You will put in there your soul's purpose for that lifetime or a mission statement for that lifetime. Lots of information goes into the soul blueprint. Everybody has a soul blueprint. We work with the blueprint a lot in the Akashic Records. And for those of you who are doing the training with me, this is what you're going to find in level 5 of the light grid. Blueprinter souls, on the other hand, is a term that we use for the soul group. If you remember, we have done episodes on light workers, we've done episode on star seeds. If you haven't listened to those, you can go back and have a listen. But these are all terms for soul groups, and soul groups is just in reference to groups of souls who have similar themes going on in that soul blueprint. Everybody has a soul blueprint, but not everybody is a blueprinter soul. Now that we have cleared that bit up, what I also must say, just to confuse matters further, is that a soul blueprint and a soul imprint are different things. So I will do a separate episode on soul blueprints and soul imprints, but if you've heard that term as well, that is not what we're talking about here today. We're talking specifically about a soul group. Can be really helpful for people to understand the different soul groups that they are part of, not so that they get attached to the label or the definition, but in respect of understanding themselves from that soul level perspective. So soul groups is something that we do cover quite a lot in Akashic Records work. It can also help people not feel so alone on their spiritual journey. Feeling alone, especially if you are in a situation where nobody else around you is going through a spiritual awakening, can be very difficult. It can be very lonely. It can be very confusing. So when people come to the Akashic Records and they understand their soul groups that they're part of and that they aren't the only person who is experiencing what they're experiencing, it can be very helpful and comforting for them. Before I get into the different types of blueprinter soul groups that I see in the Akashic Records, please remember that this is going to be an overview. This is going to be the most common ones that I come across. That doesn't mean that there aren't others. And if you resonate with more than one of these groups, that's also completely okay. People can be part of more than one soul group. Just like when we talked about the star seeds, it's possible to have had incarnations in more than one star system. It's also possible when it comes to the blueprinter soul group that you are part of more than one of these soul groups. The first blueprinter soul group that I want to cover are the Originators, and this is an extremely rare soul group to be a part of because the Originators were part of the structure of creation with, of course, beings of higher dimensions and higher frequencies, or they themselves may have been beings of higher dimensions and higher frequencies during those incarnations. But it was in respect of the actual structural composition of our physical reality and everything that that is comprised of. Of course, because of their involvement in the creation of the physical structure, they do tend to be extremely high vibrational souls. And when your soul is vibrating at an extremely high frequency, earth incarnations are very, very difficult because of the density. So they don't choose to incarnate on earth over and over and over again. They tend to only come into earth incarnations for a specific period of time. And when they do choose to come into earth for that specific period of time, they tend to cram an awful lot into those incarnations. So it isn't that they would come and pick just one or two life lessons and one or two soul contracts. They do tend to have crammed the life full with lots and lots of different learning experiences so that they can get the best out of the earth incarnation without having to continually go through the cycle of reincarnation here in the physical plane. In respect of what they actually do when they're here in their earth incarnation, they have a really deep soul level understanding of the bigger picture plan. So the bigger picture plan of the evolution of earth, of human consciousness, and they do tend to be involved in work that involves them at the global level because of this understanding that we are all one and we are all in this together, essentially. One of the unique characteristics of the originators is that even though they work at this very high level in respect of global issues, it tends to be that they don't actually receive recognition for their work or their input until midlife or onwards. You'll often see originators coming to the forefront in respect of all the amazing work that they've done midlife onwards. The blueprint originators tend to work very closely with our next group that we're going to cover, which is the blueprint designers. This is also a rare soul group to be a part of. And whilst the originator is focused on the structural aspect of the physical reality, the designer comes in to add all of the beauty to Earth's creation. Again, they were going to work with or have had incarnations at extremely high frequencies, but all of the beauty, the smells, the tastes, the textures, all of the amazing things of human life and nature, this is often down to input from the blueprint designer souls. As with the originators, because of the high vibrational level of the soul and the lack of human incarnations, these souls will again often cram quite a lot into their human incarnations. And from how they contribute to society as a physical incarnation, they tend to be very artistic, as I'm sure you can imagine, based on their work from a soul level. And they do tend to be quite solitary. Extremely high vibrational souls can find it very difficult not only to be in the physical reality, but also to be around other human beings. So you'll often find the designer soul group living a very solitary life in which their creative endeavors are where they spend their time and their focus. This is because of their desire to create more beauty and bring more beauty into the physical incarnation. Now we are going to start working with the groups that are more common. And first up, we're going to look at the blueprint technicians. The technicians are responsible for the energetic systems within the human form and also within Earth herself. So they're involved in the creation, maintenance, and the development of those systems as we go through our evolution. Those systems are evolving just as we are, and the blueprint technicians are here to help us understand the evolution of those and to work on creating systems which are going to help us work with the energetic systems of our physical form and of Earth herself. Because of their involvement with these systems, when in human incarnation, you'll often find these individuals are drawn to understanding the energetic systems of the physical form. So you may find them in medical professions where they're trying to understand the structure of the human form, but more so you will tend to find these people very connected to understanding, studying and working with systems like the light grid in the Akashic records, the chakra and the nadi system of the yogic traditions, and the meridian system within traditional Chinese medicine, because by working with these systems, they're able to work with the energy flow, not just the structural basis. A lot of the time, they will have had their introduction to the system through biological means. So you'll often find nurses, doctors, medical practitioners who then find themselves being drawn more into energy work, healing, and the more spiritual practices, as they are connected not just to the energetic systems of the human form, they're also connected to the energetic systems of plants, of animals, and of Earth herself. You'll often find a crossover with grid work and the grid worker soul group and the blueprint technicians, because they will work with the chakras of the earth, they will work with the ley lines, they will be very interested in understanding the energetics of that, and of course the evolution. The blueprint technicians tend to be very innovative, they tend to be very analytical, so very brain focused, they want to understand everything as a system, and then they will be very innovative in respect of introducing new things. One thing I see a lot with people who come for an Akashic Records reading with me, if they hold this in their archetype, is that there's often a new system waiting to be birthed through them. So even though they will learn, say, a traditional yogic system, there's often a new system that's waiting to be born through them. And it can be quite overwhelming for these individuals because they are essentially introducing a new healing modality or a new way of working with the energetic system, and they don't understand where it's coming from and why it's coming through. And once they understand the evolution of consciousness and of our energetic systems, and they have more self-confidence, they are able to bring through these new systems that of course we're going to need as our consciousness continues to evolve at this time. The Blueprint Deliverer Soul Group is one that you're going to see a lot amongst spiritual teachers, especially if those spiritual teachers focus on unity, consciousness, divine love, and compassion for all. This soul group will often hold a lot of ancient wisdom within their light grid. And as they really get to know themselves, as they go through their healing journey, as they embark upon their spiritual practice, in doing so, what happens is this ancient wisdom is often unlocked, and then they're going to share that with others. They tend to be able to take very complex or paradoxical spiritual information and break it down into much simpler terms for people. And they are very, very grounded and embodied in respect of that spiritual knowledge. So it's not a case of they understand very technical esoteric terms and language. It's that they're actually living from the place of understanding spiritual knowledge. So it's that move from knowledge to wisdom. They hold wisdom. It's an embodiment of the knowledge that they have gained and that they hold within their light grid. What can often happen with blueprint deliverers is people can find them a little bit off-putting because they're always going to speak their mind. They're always going to speak their truth. And during the earlier part of the incarnation, perhaps before they've really connected to this part of themselves, it can come across as a little bit offhand and a little bit brash. But as they do develop and as they really connect to that understanding of unity consciousness and unconditional love for all, their message does tend to become a little bit gentler. They do have a burning desire within them to help the collective in respect of this evolution of consciousness. And you may sometimes hear this group referred to as the Blueprint Messenger. If you've heard of the Blueprint Messenger, it's the same terminology as a Blueprint Deliverer. I'm talking about the same group here. The Blueprint Translator is another one that you're going to see a lot with spiritual teachers, but the translator's focus tends to be more on balance rather than unity, love, and compassion. It doesn't mean that they aren't going to teach about unity, love, and compassion. It just means that their focus of their teachings tends to be about balance. And this is balance in all ways, balance between the human form and the spiritual self, balance between the higher and the lower chakras, balance between the internal divine masculine and the internal divine feminine to ultimately achieve union within. As with the deliverers, because they really live from that place of embodying the spiritual knowledge, they do tend to exude this wisdom, and they do have that ability to break down complex spiritual concepts and topics and practices into a very digestible and easy to understand form. Again, as with the deliverers, these people can appear quite overwhelming because they aren't going to hold back in respect of offering guidance, and they will always point out to somebody when that person is spiritually bypassing or that they are developing spiritual ego along the way on their spiritual journey. The last blueprint or soul group that I'm going to cover is the blueprint changers, and these are a rebellious group of souls. If you are familiar with the Dharma types, this group is very connected to the outsiders in the Dharma types. These souls are here to really make changes in this world. They often have a warrior spirit, that wanting to take on the system, but not just take on the system to bring it down, take on the system because they have an idea and a system in mind that could make things better for the entirety of humanity. They really are driven by helping others, not only helping others on their spiritual journey, but on making the world a better place for humanity as a whole. Unfortunately, blueprint changers will often pick extremely difficult lifetimes, especially early part of their lifetimes, because there has to be this going through certain traumatic events and experiences to then be able to help other people heal through those things, or to see how bad systems are from the inside. There tends to have to be this experiential process, and of course they do have to spend time healing and transmuting everything that they have experienced before they can step into their role of service fully. Does not mean in any way, shape or form that they have to be fully healed or perfect or enlightened or anything like that to be able to be of service, but they do tend to have a period of time where they focus on themselves before they step into this role of complete system change and helping other people do the same. One last thing that I want to mention about the blueprinter soul groups in general is they do tend to resonate more with being a blueprinter than a starseed. Now, this does not mean that blueprinters don't also have lifetimes within different star systems and different schools. It just tends to be when they come across the terminology that they see the term starseed and they hear it's about, lifetimes within other star systems, and they have this feeling of, okay, that's great, that might be interesting for some people, but I want to understand myself here and now in this human incarnation. They tend to resonate more with the term blueprinter and the definitions that I've given here today. So if you're resonating really strongly with any of these definitions, or maybe more than one, it's very likely that you are part of the Blueprinters soul group. And hopefully this episode has helped give you some clarification and understanding. Of course, if you want to know for certain which soul group you are a part of, then you could do that through your own Akashic records, or you can book in for an Akashic reading with myself or another practitioner. What I will say at this moment in time, and we are in September at the moment, if you're listening to this later, is currently on my 2025 schedule. You're only able to book a one-on-one session with me if it's a combination session, and the combination session is an Akashic Records reading and an Akashic clearing in the same session. So we spend about 2 hours together. This is purely a measure that I've taken whilst I organise my teaching schedule for 2025. So on my website, you will see, if you look at the single session of Akashic Reading or Akashic Clearing, there is a form that you can fill in, and for everybody who fills in those forms, as soon as those one single sessions come available for 2025, once I've organised my schedule, everybody who registers there is going to receive an email from me telling them that the schedule is now open and you're going to be able to book those individual sessions. You can, for the period of January onwards, book in a combination session with me. That's no problem at all. It is by far the most popular session that people book in with me, and the dates and times that are available on the website are able to be booked. But if you are looking at just booking a reading or just booking a clearing, then please just register your interest on that form and you will be notified as and when the single sessions become available again for 2025. Next week's podcast episode is going to be a conversation that I had with the beautiful Sam Kelsey. We had a great chat on surrender, the Tao, the spiritual journey. So be sure to check that out. It will be available next Friday. As always, I hope that you have a beautiful, restful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week.